Taoiseach, I want to return to the question of data centres and the threat to thousands of households, some of the most vulnerable people in the country this winter and beyond, of power cuts, of them losing their heating and freezing cold nights, and, as was warned by Dr Fitzgerald, none other than him who heads up the RSI, the potential of hypothermia in old people. Now, this isn't just to do with the limitation on energy, it's very much to do with the increased costs of electricity and the rising price of carbon. But just to go back on the data centres issue, because it's very much connected with the overall problem that we're having. So just to relay some of the facts again, I know you were all listening to the debate this morning, I wasn't, but I want to go over them. There are currently 70 data centres operating in Ireland, which represents a 25% increase compared to 2020. Dublin has the largest amount of them and has now become the hub for data centres in Europe. This represents an annual increased demand of around 600 gigawatts, the equivalent of 140,000 households per year being added to the grid. Would that it were 140,000 new homes per year? That would be marvellous, but it's not, it's data centres. Over 2020, we saw a 27% increase in gas demand from these data centres. I want to do a few quotes to you from very representative bodies who look after our energy. EirGrid have said, the rate at which data centres are seeking to grow their load is unprecedented. Over the last 4 years, we've seen an annual increase in demand of around 600 gigawatts, equivalent to the 140,000 households. The key demand is data centres. The median demand predicts that data centres account for 25% of all demand by 2030. Crew have said the type of projections that EirGrid have given us is that electricity demand is to rise between 50% by 2030 and primarily driven by the data centres. This is the primary driver, and it is really exceptional on the impact that it's having. MARI, the Research Institute, have said that data centres currently requesting connection are facilitated. Ireland's legal 2030 target of reducing economy-wide emissions by 51% would become effectively impossible to meet. So which is it? Data centres or providing people with energy to heat their homes, or data centres or reaching our climate targets? And just to quote Dr Fitzgerald again of the ERSI, he says the cost of interruptions to electricity supply in a modern society are huge, we all know that, but he also says if you have a significant interruption, the blackouts, if they occur, will have much greater impact on households than they will on business. And therefore I want to put it to you that in the context where households are facing ever-increasing energy bills and carbon taxes, that the continued granting of planning permission to energy-intensive data centres is being perceived as an unfair distribution of the costs and benefits. Not only are you failing on your climate targets, on giving people energy, but you're also failing on a just transition, which is supposed to be at the key and the corner of everything your partners in government stand for. So what is it? Data centres, heat, data centres or climate targets?
It's not that crude
juxtaposition. It's never that crude.
Juxtaposition. It's not that simple. And that's an overly simplistic presentation, in my view. Now, the Commission for Regulation of Utilities and EirGrid, they have the statutory responsibility in terms of ensuring the balance between demand and supply. And that's what this Oireachtas established and provided that infrastructure. That said, government has met with both, and government will be taking decisions in respect of immediate issues. But again, they both have advised that there is a short to medium term risk to electricity security of supply, and they've identified the main challenges. The lower than expected availability of some existing power stations. So 2 went out. Anticipated new power stations not being developed as planned. Expected growth in demand for electricity, including due to the growth of data centres. So we're not ignoring the issue of data centres, because, as I said earlier, the CRU is currently undertaking a review and developing a new data centre connection policy to ensure that their operation is aligned with supply. And pending that, there hasn't been any movement in relation to data centres, pending the outcome and conclusion of that review. But the idea of just simply saying banning them isn't, in my view, a measured response either, and tenable into the future. And the expected closure of power stations that make up approximately 25% of conventional electricity generation capacity over time, that's another factor. And hence there will be a need to extend those by a year if that's required in the medium term. And any short-term risks are reducing significantly because of the fact that the upcoming return to operation of the 2 key gas-fired stations, they're due back now, as I said earlier, and that reduces supply. But of course, again, any risks such as that will not necessarily impact the supply of electricity to customers and particularly to households. On the energy cost side, yes, in the budget we're going to have to address issues around the capacity of people to meet fuel costs, particularly low-income families, in respect of measures that we will take to try and protect people from a separate issue, which is the growth or the increase in energy costs across Europe because of the rebound of the economy, both here and across Europe, in respect of the emergence from COVID-19 and issues around supply from Russia and so on. So there's a lot of global issues affecting the oil supply at the moment and the cost of energy, which we're going to have to, obviously, in the budget take into consideration in terms of protecting people from that.
With Crew, you've met with Airgrid and you've taken advice. I haven't heard anyone on the government benches deny the warnings from Crew, from Airgrid or from Mari. I haven't denied them, you haven't called them wrong, but you've met with them. I want to ask you a direct question as a leader. Have you met with iCloud Infrastructure Ireland? Have you met with Michael McCarthy, the former Labour TD, who heads up this lobbying group on behalf of the global corporations, to whom you pay such servitude that you say Ireland has a reputation of serving the interests of FDIs, but you don't have a great reputation of serving the interests of your own citizens? It is not that this country should be used as a basis for the ever-expanding need of global citizens for data. We have to be measured in about how we look after our own citizens. And what I see here is a craven bending over of this and previous governments towards the global corporations. At their behest, you are willing to have heat cut off in homes this winter. You are willing to miss our climate emissions targets in 2030. You are willing to destroy the reputation of this country in other ways, and that it's not able to provide the energy needed to bring in other investment.
Thank you very much.
So are we listening to Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg, or are we listening to Joe and Josephine Soap, who need the heat and who need the price of electricity kept down?
First of all, we are intent and determined to meet our climate change targets by 2030. Absolutely determined to meet them. And have brought in legislation which has been groundbreaking in that respect. And this government has done that and has passed our climate bill and will be developing a climate action plan. So we're very determined to meet those particular targets. And we don't believe in cutting anyone's heat off. And again, you're deliberately creating that sort of divide, that sort of divisive approach to these issues. And may I say, I have not met iCloud, whatever you call them, infrastructure, or indeed I haven't met Michael McCarthy in respect of this. I have not met him at all in respect of this. You have asked a question, and I want to make the point. You talked about FDI, that we have a great record. You said it in a very sort of throwaway remark, as if it doesn't matter. I'm not interested in any multinational company for the sake of a multinational company. I'm interested in the thousands of people that they employ in this country. That's who I'm interested in. And I think the problem with you, Deputy, at times, is that you just dismiss that as if it's something that should never have happened in this country. Because I know you have an ideological view about how economies should be modelled, how society should be modelled. I don't accord with it. I don't agree with you. I think the fact that there's thousands of people working in factories all over this country matters. No, I think there's an issue in terms of the growth of data itself and the power demands that arise from that. But we're not going to change that by simply banning data centres forevermore. If every country adopted that, you will not have the digital transformation that is happening, whether you like it or not. There are two fundamental drivers at the moment. We need to move to a green-based economy, and there will be digital transformation. There will be increased demands on the production of and utilisation of data. That's a reality of the modern world. The challenge is to grow and develop an energy infrastructure that can deal with that and meet that.